All right, before we jump into the second part of Unit 3 here, I just want to take a quick jump to Blackboard. What I added this weekend was a wiki. A wiki is just a place for you to post information that everybody else can get to. So it's a class wiki. And what I intend for this to be is an opportunity for you to share some of your programming techniques with your classmates. If you find some cool way of doing something, you can post it to the wiki. So you can click here or there, whichever learning plans you want. And then here is the wiki. And you can post stuff up there. And here's my example that I've done so far. It's usually bigger than that. My screen's kind of shrunk down. That's my example of what a wiki might look like for toggling a Boolean property. We talked about it in class, but I wanted to put an example up there. If you have something in your program that you wish to share with others, a technique, I first ask that you wait for the due date. So if it's something cool that you did in your welcome screen, then wait to share it until tonight's done. Tomorrow, share it, because tonight's when the welcome screen is done. More likely, if you found some cool way to do images in the States program, wait until Friday or Saturday and then post it, because I don't want you to give keys away, particularly for extra credit stuff, up there on the wiki, but so be it. There are ways for you to get emails every time somebody posts something up there, but it might just be worth your while to say every Saturday or something, every Sunday, half an hour before the Packer game, I'm going to the wiki to see what's new. When you want to post, you simply create a wiki page, give it a title, throw in a bunch of stuff like I did. When you see others, you can comment on them. If you've got other ideas, you can create your own. This is for you. My students last semester started asking for them, I thought, and I've seen some pretty cool stuff. I expect a couple of things to come up here for the States program. And if I think it's worthwhile, I'll ask you to do it. But again, not until Saturday. All right, so that's the wiki. What else is new here? Okay, my website. Thought I zoomed in here. I guess it zoomed me back out. There's a new assignment up there that I'm formally assigning to you today. This link up here I need to remove. That's a dead link now. But what I've done is taken this assignment, this design assignment, and split it into 3 parts. I've had trouble in the past because I talk and talk and talk and talk about this design stuff, and then by the time I get to the end of it, you forget all about IOPS and screen layouts and how to do that stuff. Then I give you an assignment and make you do it, and you've already forgotten. So what I'm trying to do here is, while the IOPS and screen layouts and that stuff is still relatively fresh in your mind, make you do one. Okay. Then we're going to learn about toe charts and pseudocode, and you'll do that in part 2. And then we'll learn about flowcharts and test plans, and you'll do that in part 3. And these 3 parts together is what that assignment used to be. And actually bumped up by 5 points in the process. Right. So you've got an assignment for Friday. Wait, I already have an assignment for Friday. No, that's for Unit 2. This is Unit 3. Right. So you got 2. Giving you fair warning, I hope, here, to get that done. I'm guessing part 2 is going to be due Monday. And Brad's back there shaking his head. So when is this going to end? Never. It's just going to keep coming. All right, it will end December 18th. Okay. But that's just this class. And then there's networking and Microsoft. Yep. Afraid so. So part 1, let's just take a quick look. All right, I've got a relative who owns a rental car company, and he wants to provide a way to give his customers an estimate for how much they're going to spend on gas. Very common mistake here when you read this is you include the cost of the rental vehicle. No, that's a given. What we're writing here is a little app just to figure out, if you're going to rent this car, we're also going to charge you for gas. So we're going to estimate how many gallons you're going to use. Basically what this program does is figures out, asks the user a few questions, asks the owner a couple of questions, the car they rented, what kind of gas mileage does it get, etc. Okay. I mentioned to you last week, make sure I'm in the right class. We started Unit 3. You've done IOPS already. Okay. Everybody's a little out of whack here, me particularly. All right, so your job for this program is to develop the IOP. What do you think? What do you determine from that description of the program. And by the way, the program should first allow the user to enter the customer. Well, geez, I think that's an input. Well, this is what typically happens when you look at a printed description. The user enters. Then we display the date the estimate expires. That's probably an output. Your inputs and outputs should not be terribly difficult to extract from that paragraph. Finish the IOP, and then go to Visual Studio and do a layout. Paste it into your worksheet like we did. My advice is give yourself a little time. If this is due Friday at midnight, I don't recommend you try pasting things if you're having trouble with that pasting stuff on Friday. Do it on Thursday or before Thursday's class. You can ask me in class. But this is due Friday. It's worth 5 points. It's an assignment, not a ticket. It's an assignment. So you can turn in late for docked points. But then the problem comes in on Monday, part 2 is due. And if your part 1 isn't done yet, how are you going to do your part 2? Well, it's possible, but it ain't easy.
Monday or Tuesday?
I don't know. We'll sort that out. See how far I get today. Steve?
So you're doing a screen layout in Visual Studio and taking
Screen snapshot.
snapshots, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And pasting those into Excel.
Right. So all Excel or LibreOffice, whatever, Calc I think it's called there. I'll try using its official name. Paste it into Calc. All right. Either one doesn't matter to me. They should be pretty transportable. And then you're sending me one document. That should have both in it. It should have your IOP in the first tab and the screen layout in the second tab. Don't lose it, don't throw it away, because you'll be using the same thing then for part 2 and then building on it again for part 3. And that's what we're going to see today. Other questions about that assignment? Kind of late notice for you, but it's still Friday. That's 4 days away. This shouldn't take you much more than an hour at most. So if it does, you're having some issues. We need to get those sorted out. That's part of why I'm doing it. You will get a chance to do more of these, but this is your chance to do one. All right, I'm going to OneDrive real quick. Last time we did some IOPs and screen layouts, and in the notes there was a pay sheet IOP trial, right? Something for you to try. So I want to show you my key to that, if it's going to let me sign in here. There we go. I've posted it in OneDrive, so you can go look at it whenever you want to. It's in the Unit 3 folder. And here it is. So when I looked at that assignment, that's the one that's in the notes. Right? It's just, let's see now. Let's close one of these here. Don't click. There we go. Okay. What I saw in there is that we're going to enter the employee's name, how many hours they worked, total. Okay, so let's just use an example of 47 hours you worked this week. What's your hourly pay? What's your overtime start? When do you start getting paid for overtime? Typically it's 40 hours, but it might be 35. It might be, who knows what the contract allows for, so let's pretend it's 40. If I worked 47 and my overtime starts at 40, then at some point I'm going to figure out how many overtime hours I have. And finally, what's your overtime rate? If you, typically that's time and a half or double time, or who knows what it's going to be, but it's an input that we're going to ask the user to provide us. What's the employee's name? How many hours did they work? What do we normally pay them? When does overtime start? And what's the multiplication factor for overtime? Then we're going to spit out the employee name. Remember, that's called an echo. Why am I echoing it? Because the description said to do it. We might print this, so in the results, the name might be at the very top of the screen layout. I want to also see it down near the answers. That's rare, but occasionally you'll do it. How many regular hours did they work? How many overtime hours did they work? How much did they make for regular pay? How much did they make for overtime pay? And this is a good description of my salary. How much gross pay did they get? We get all the inputs, we calculate all the outputs, and we display all the outputs. Notice the camelback. Even though OT is an abbreviation, I still put it in lowercase. If it was later in the word, I would capitalize the O and lowercase the T. Abbreviations are camelback like everything else. So this is up on SkyDrive or OneDrive. You can compare it to yours. If you have questions, feel free to email me. I don't need to see this, yours. Okay. If your names are different, that's fine. As long as it's the same here as it is here. It's the same here as it is here and here, that you don't change the names. It's very common for people to start changing names all of a sudden. They should be very, very consistent. We're talking about the same thing here. This overtime rate is the same as that overtime rate. This gross pay is what we're calculating and what we're displaying. You change the names and it's very easy for not very bright programmers like me to get confused. And I can pretend to be stupid real easy. What is it doing? Look at it go. Hands free. It's doing. You guys are doing it. Okay, you're messing with me because you're all looking at it on the same time. And it's probably trying to listen to all 20 of us at the same time. Go, no, stop. Okay, I'm getting out of there. So you can see that, compare it. You might want to download it. Please don't change it. The downside of the stuff that's on OneDrive is you could change it. Okay. My preference is that you right-click it, download it, look at it that way. But if you're just looking, this is fine. Questions about this? If you have them later, please email me. If you're not sure about yours, ask me. Right. Most common mistake is probably not having the employee name in here. That's minor. How would you know that it was echoed? It probably wasn't expressed very clearly, but if it said in the outputs include the employee name. In most programs, we don't output the inputs because they stay on the screen. I didn't do a screen layout for this. Right, but we will, kind of looking ahead, here's what the toe chart's going to look like. Now, those of you who are messing with this, just hold still for a second. Just look at mine. And notice what's in the toe chart. I'm moving into Unit 3 lecture now, so here's your last chance. Questions? Okay. Notice what's in the toe chart in the tasks column. Get the employee name, hours worked, hourly pay, overtime rate, overtime start. Calculate and display. Those look familiar? Like exactly out of the processing column of the IOP. And I promised you, and this is part of why this is all in one big document, I promised you that what we're going to do is use what you do in the level 1 designs in level 2, because we use the inputs and the outputs to figure out how many labels, how many text boxes and date pickers and stuff we need. Okay. And then we're also going to use the Unit 1 design as the starting point for Unit 3. And then we're going to use this stuff over here. What are those? Event handlers to help us define what do we need to do in level 4. So this is where we're going. So it's kind of a preview. And you'll have that to look at later if you need it as well. All right. Today what we want to do is, first of all, I'm going to go to my, what class is this? 10 o'clock class. And I'm going to open up my meters to yards design document. You should have one. If you don't, you can go up to SkyDrive and definitely download it. Right, and here's my meters to yards design. Guess I should have opened that before if I know it's going to take this long. So here I am in LibreOffice Calc, and remember we did an IOP. And in our IOP, we found the inputs and the outputs. We determined that it's going to take 2 steps. This is just an example. It doesn't usually do that. It's going to take 2 steps to do the calculations and then display the yards. We did a screen layout. Get the meters, display the yards, calculate, clear so the user can start over, and exit. So that's a quick review. Now we're moving on to a toe chart. A toe chart determines 3 things. First of all, what tasks do we need to do? And as you saw in that previous example, the tasks almost entirely come from the IOP. Okay, we're going to cut and paste. Then we're going to figure out what objects am I going to need for that. Well, we kind of did that in level 2, didn't we? Except we didn't name them. At this point, we're going to name our objects. If you got carried away when you're doing your screen layout and you named all your buttons and you named all your text boxes and you named all your output labels, because they're all going to need names. If you've already named them, then the names here better match. And finally, we're going to figure out, okay, we've got all these objects. What events are those objects going to respond to? Click events, hover events, double click events. What do you think they're going to be for the most part? What kind of events are we going to respond to? What's the most common? Click. Thank you. I think in the recording, or I think I'm lecturing to an empty room here for a second. Okay, except that you guys keep moving my stuff around. Okay, so we're going to have mostly click events. It's not real hard to figure that out. All right? It's going to be a while before we respond to other kinds of events. Notice to make my tasks and my objects and my events a little easier to understand, I've categorized them into inputs, processing, and outputs. Whoa! That sounds familiar, like an IOP, right? So how do we build this? Step 1. Go back to the IOP, go to the processing column, highlight all of these cells. And I'm just dragging. If you're using Excel, you should get a plus sign to drag. Here in Calc, I get an arrow. I'm going to copy those to the clipboard. Control-C ought to do it. Racing ants in Calc, just like in Excel. I call those racing ants because they look like they're racing around. That tells you that this is on the clipboard. Then we switch to the toe chart. Make sure you're in cell B2 because this is where the tasks go. And paste, Control-V. Now in Excel, when you paste, you can say, don't paste the formatting. There's a little thing that pops up and said, don't paste the formatting. I'm going to miss that here in LibreOffice. Notice how I got some extra borders floating around here on the left-hand side that weren't there before. I don't care. Right. I'm not worried about the borders and this looking beautiful. If you're that anal, then you can add the borders back in again. Now here's my inputs, get meters, but here's calc feet, yards, and display yards. This needs to be under processing, so I'm going to select all 3 of these and drag. Now you might remember in the first recording, I had trouble dragging yards, and I looked it up online, and notice when I drag, it highlights. I want to move that. How do I move that? I looked it up. In LibreOffice, moving one cell is not easy because it wants to highlight. You have to drag down and then drag back and then let go and then you can drag. Oh, geez, come on. It's got to be better than that. I think the easy solution here is highlight 2 boxes. Then drag. LibreOffice is not quite as easy. In Microsoft Excel, if you're using Excel to move a cell, you've got to touch its bottom edge or an edge someplace and drag it. And so now I have my processing in the right columns. Now if I was really anal, I could grab this cell's formatting, and here's the format painter, and say, okay, all the rest of you cells, you're going to be formatted the same way, and it should get me pretty close to the original. I've kind of lost a vertical bar here for some reason, but let's try that one more time. Oh well, minor. But the rest of them, it's kind of come back to what it was before. The tasks for your toe chart come from the IOP. But there's a couple of more things that we need to do. Right? We need to calculate, but we also determined when we were doing the screen layout that we need to clear the form. So underneath the processing.
Sorry, I'm on a read only right now.
That's because you're using my copy. You got to download it. You cannot modify my copy on OneDrive, or it'll let you, but it's not real happy about it. So you need to make sure you right-click my zip file. Oh no, you downloaded it, the zip file, but you double-click the zip file. You didn't extract it. You have to extract it first. You can't change documents inside of the zip file. So do the extraction and then do this stuff.
All right.
Okay. So in addition to this, when you do your IOPS, we are always going to have a clear button and an exit button. So that's part of our processing. It's not generating outputs. So underneath my calculations, I'm going to say we also need to clear the form. And we need to exit the program. Always add those two. It's going to be a while before we have programs that don't clear. The clear button on most forms, particularly if they're data entry forms, is the start over or do it again for a different set of numbers. In the old days, there would be in those green screen days, you'd be a little prompt at the bottom. So there's your answers. Would you like to start again? And you say yes, and it clears the whole screen and it starts all over again. Well, that's kind of what this does. And we're always going to have an exit button just to give you some more stuff to code. All right. Those are our inputs. Here's our processing. There's our outputs. Now we need to figure out what objects are we going to use to accomplish these missions. All right, we need to get the meters. I'm going to cheat again. I'm going to steal the format of this one and try putting it up there to see if I got my border back. My analness is now happy. I took the format of this cell, used my format painter, and painted that one. Now it's formatted the same. Enough of the analness. How do I, and don't worry about that in yours. If your borders are all flaky, I'll look at it funny. I guess they're not anal enough yet. It'll come. All right, that'll happen to you. You'll get to be as anal as me before you know it. All right, and it'll make the rest of your family crazy. Enough of that. What am I going to use to get the meters? Now, we already decided, right? In the screen layout, we decided to use what's this? Text box. So in my tow chart, I'm now going to give that text box a name. If you already gave it a name when you were working on the layout, make sure you use the same name here. I use txt as a prefix. We're going to use our names starting right now so that they can transfer later. And what else should I call it? Text what? Meters, capital M. There's only one input, so that was pretty easy. Let's jump down here to the form. To clear the form, what am I going to use? The button. I use BTN. You like BUT, go for it. I like to call it button clear. Makes sense. How about exit? Button exit. Some of you like close. That's fine. BTN close. And I would say close the program or even exit and call it button close. That's acceptable. What's going to make me calculate the feet? Louder. Which button? The calculate button. BTN calculate. Or BTN calc. Here you get to choose its name. Just make sure I'm going to be checking. It's going to make you crazy. I'm going to check this tow chart against your code when you turn them in Unit 4. And the names better match. Why are you changing names? This was a good name. Why would you change it to button calc when you write the program? Because it's shorter. Then use that in your design. When am I going to calculate the yards?
Same one.
Same one. One button can do two things. You haven't seen that a whole lot yet because you have your states buttons that do one thing. Well, not really. They changed one label, then they changed another label. For some of you, they changed the picture. They did three things. Buttons can do hundreds of things if that's what we need them to do, and that's kind of what we're planning. And notice here, the calc and the Excel, let me fill that in for you, comes in handy. You can just press tab or enter, and it'll accept the rest of that value. You don't have to type the whole thing. The squiggles get annoying, but it's basically telling you misspelled this. For programmers, spell check is often very painful. This is the first semester I've had spell check in Visual Studio because it's the first time that I've known about an intelligent spell checker. It spell checks your comments and it spell checks your strings, but it doesn't spell check your variable names and your object names because they're never going to spell check. So this is normal. Okay. Now this one's a little trickier. I'm going to display the yards. But I have two questions here. When am I going to display that? What's going to cause it to happen?
Calculate.
The button calculate again. Okay, but we're not done yet. If you moved, up here, this is the formula bar, right, in Excel and in Calc. If you moved away and you want to come in here, you can double click and edit, or you can edit it up here, wherever it suits you. I'm going to edit it down here because I want you to be able to see it. Comma. What else is affected? Where?
The label.
In the label. What am I going to call it? Kevin, you're on a roll.
Label yards.
How about label yards? Years. Getting ahead of myself. There we go. Enter. Now what made this move down again, if you're being anal, this is aligned to the bottom. We'd have to go find the button up here someplace that formats this to align to the top. I would save it till you're done. Okay, now we got objects for all of these things in our toe chart. So now the last thing we need to do is figure out what events are we going to respond to. What event is the text box going to respond to? Trick question. What code are you going to write to deal with the text box? None. You don't have to. Do you have to write code so that when the user presses a key, you show it in the text box? No. The user hits backspace, take letters out? No. The user just types merrily on their way, highlights, deletes, does all kinds of stuff in the text box, and your program just, our code, doesn't do anything. And I'm talking about the text box now, right? So for the calculate button, which event am I going to respond to? Click, button, calculate. And you can put the underscore if you wish, or just a space, click. Later it'll be called underscore click, but that's Visual Studio's rule. What do you think this one's going to be? I got to spell it right. Calculate, click. Same thing down here, right? Button, calculate, click. Now, the reason you have to keep repeating these things, isn't it possible that I could calculate the feet on click and calculate the yards on double click? Stupid, but possible. All right, so we're going to repeat these event names every single time. How about clearing the form? Click. Exiting, click. Button calculate, click. It's not supposed to be hard. Remember, this is our toolbox example. It's a very small example. It doesn't get a whole lot harder later. Doesn't get a whole lot harder later. Matter of fact, I missed something. When I clear the form, I'm going to do it because of the button. But what's going to change? The text box. So after button clear here, I double clicked, comma, text meters is going to change. I want to know what's affected, which objects are affected by this event. What else? The label. Yards, thank you. Should do that example first. When you clear the form, just about every every input, every output is also affected. Just like down here, when I calculated, the output was affected. When I calculate, does it change text box? No. Does it change the label? No. Yes, I'm sorry, the label, yes. So it's another thing to keep in the back of your mind, and that's why we have this example. When you clear the form, it clears all of the inputs and all of the outputs. So they're affected. When does this happen? When are all these things affected when I click on button clear? When does this happen and this happen? What we now have that's going to take us in the next level is how many event handlers for this program do I have to write? 1, 2, 3. How many different event handlers are there? 3. I already know at this stage that there's only 3 event handlers in this program. That's less than your states program. Yeah, but this is the toolbox. It gets more complicated. There's only 3 event handlers. So when you're done, you'll have a button calc, a button clear, and a button exit. That's it. If we choose to add something more, we should add it to the design. Questions? Save it and close it. Open up bowling. Again, make sure you're in an unzipped version so you're not locked into read-only. I will save all of mine back to OneDrive when I'm done. But open up bowling, let's do it again. Just as a reminder, in bowling we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inputs. We had 3 outputs. And we had this processing. For the screen layout, we used a date picker, a bunch of text boxes, some labels, and once again, 3 buttons. So, first thing, back to the IOP. I need the processing. So I'm going to click and drag, copy to the choke chart. Paste. Now I'm going to click and drag, whoops, click and drag, move these down so they line up a little better. And because I'm anal, I'm going to steal this cell's formatting and apply it to all the others. That's an optional step. You don't have to do that. Oops, I got an extra line. That's okay. I can tolerate that. Okay. Now I have all my objects that I need to define. This, we're not done yet, are we? What's some more processing we need here? Clear the form and exit the program. Always have to add those. They're not part of our level 1 design. Well, shouldn't we go back and put it in there? No. That was level 1. It was big picture. What do we got to do? What are the inputs? What are the outputs? Then we got to level 2. We said we're going to need a clear button. We're going to need an exit button. Level 2 stuff, this is a combination of level 1 and level 2. We're expanding on it. Always clear the form, always exit the program. If you run out of room because you got so many inputs, then you insert rows. You can do that probably using the Insert tab here in Calc. All right, now we need to give object names to every one of these objects. What are we going to use to get the bowler name? Text box. And we've already decided what. Now we're deciding what we're going to name it. And if I'm repeating myself, that's good. If you've already named it, my advice is use that name so that you don't have to change it. Because your design and your implementation, your program itself, must match. For the date picker, I'm going to use for the bowling date, I'm going to use a date picker. I use DTP, date time picker. Bowling date. It's always amazing to me how many of these names change as we go. All we're really doing is tacking on prefixes, right? Why change the names? I wouldn't. The scores are text boxes. Can I put a 1 in an object name? Absolutely. What am I going to calculate? On button calculate, right? Isn't that going to change my label? No. Calculations do not change labels. They work in memory, behind the scenes. This is the magic of computer programming. We use the computer's RAM. When we do calculations, those calculations do not affect the label directly. That happens when we say display. It's a completely different command. Now, some of you have a little bit of programming experience. You say, I can do it all in one. You can, but you may not. Because that's not, I don't think it's good programming to get your inputs, convert them into numbers, do calculations, immediately stuff the results into a label. Bad idea. Very hard to maintain. Plus, there's a whole lot of overhead that makes it ugly in C#. When are we going to calculate the average? On button calculate. Next polling date, button calculate. I'm just typing a couple of letters and Excel's letting me fill in the rest. Clear the form. I love how this box keeps shifting. Weird. Button clear. And button exit. I'm going to save this, minimize it, and restore it, see if it looks better when I come back. There we go. When do I display the series? On the button calculate. But when we display, something has to cause it to happen, and we have to display it someplace. So the second part of this, I'm going to press a comma, tab first. That's not what I wanted. Comma, LBL series. Some of you know in Excel you can stretch these columns by touching the column letters up at the top, the right edge. Notice how I get a double-headed arrow. You can stretch these if you want to make that a little easier to read. I'm cool with that. Or you can leave them the way they are. Now my row is too big and I can bring it back up again, but you don't have to worry about that if you don't want to. Button calculate. There's got to be a way to accept that and keep going. Comma. It's going to change label average. And button calculate. Can't press the arrow key, can't press tab. Also changes LBL next polling date. All we're really doing here is designating what our object names are and which objects are involved in every one of these tasks that we have to do. These are the tasks that we have to do. Which object? Oops, forgot button clear. What else does button clear affect? Every input, every output. I suggest you do this last because at this point I've named all my inputs, I've named all my outputs. So this is going to get long, right? Text bowler name. Boy, be careful. I'm checking for spelling errors. DTP bowling date. Text score 1, text score 2. Phew. Score 3. LBL series, LBL average, LBL next bowling date. Oh my God, really? Yeah, it's not that big a deal. We're clearing all of those things. How? Not yet. Level 4. Next hour. This is the part everybody forgets. I almost did it myself. But I do like to do it last because by that time I have all my labels and all my text boxes named. Again, there's no reason that you have to do these things from top to bottom sequentially. You could define your inputs and then come down here and take care of your outputs and then take care of button exit because it's simple. These are simple and do this last. What events are my text boxes going to respond to? None. Date pickers? None. I would prefer that you put none in every one of these. I'm just pressing N and then enter because it gives me the none. But if you put one in there, some of you know how to merge cells. None for all of these. That's acceptable. How about this one? Like button calc click, right? repeat it, repeat it, button clear click. God, look at these are all the same. Can't you come up with something new? Yeah, I could. But the fact that you're doing these over and over and over again, and these are very common techniques, is good practice. How many event handlers are we going to write for this one? 3. How many event handlers for your gas estimate program? 3. It's going to get old. There'll be more, I promise. But we just designed a treehouse. Save it. Here's a rare opportunity. This is a good place to stop the recording, so we'll take an early break.